Good morning. My name is Andy Coles and welcome to the latest of the Beaufort Financial webinars, this one on the new SRA rules in practice. We are delighted to have David Seager from SIFA today, who is going to run you through about 40 minutes worth of information about the new rules coming out from the SRA. We will then follow that up with a couple of little presentations from one from myself and one from Chris Knight from Beaufort regarding how interacting with solicitors and accountants makes a difference to our job, and just a little quick client scenario of what we do and how we deal with our clients going forward. We've been members of SIFA for many years now and have worked alongside Dave for a number of years, doing as much as we can to help the integration and the collaboration between solicitors and financial advisors. So without further ado, one more thing before we start. If you do have any questions during the webinar, please put them in the chat. We will probably deal with the questions at the end of the seminar. And if you don't get any questions answered, please feel free to speak to your Beaufort representative afterwards, and we'll endeavour to answer them. But without any further ado, I'll now pass you across to Dave, who will start the presentation for you. Dave, can you hear me?
I can indeed.
Cool. I think the floor is all yours. I will turn my mic off. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Slides don't seem to be moving along.
Just okay.
There we are.
There you go. And I can now.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for that introduction. As Andrew said, my name is David Seager. I'm the Managing Director of SIFA Professional, which is the arm of SIFA that helps good quality financial planning firms hopefully interact more professionally with the legal community. As an organisation, SIFA have been doing this really since 1992, so 28 years in February it was that we launched. Originally as SIFA stood for Solicitors for Independent Financial Advice, because we initially as an organisation were a service provider to help solicitors set up their own in-house financial planning departments and support them regulatory and compliantly to do that. And for many years, that's all we did. In fact, until 2001, it was really the dawn of the FSA and the Financial Services and Markets Act, where the new regulator for financial services asked for one of the partners in the law firm to be the compliance function for the financial services, when most solicitors said, actually, that's not what we signed up for. So since then, we spent more of our time helping financial planning firms work with solicitors, because I think we all know that there's still a massive need for planning for so much of what legal professionals do. There's a great overlap in many areas between legal work and financial planning. So that's what we do as an organisation. And the last 3 years, really, for under the future of the profession reforms from the SRA, there's been a lot of very positive news from our perspective. And what we're going to try and do this morning is look at why the SRA looked to change, culminating in the introduction of transparency and obviously the standards and regulations that arrived in November last year. Now, what were the drivers behind that change, and why we feel, certainly at SIFA Professional, and I hope you agree, that there is some positive news within those changes for a more holistic approach to working on clients' affairs when it comes to the overlap between legal and financial. So today, what I aim to cover, and there's an obvious order to it, but I will go off at tangents, no doubt, to try and keep it as interesting as I possibly can. But what I really want to do, first of all, is look back at the last 3 years and why those reforms happened, and certainly honing in on why and how that impacted on how you, as a legal community, as a solicitor community, are working and can work compliantly with financial planning professionals, and a look at that relationship. I also want to look at what the SRA has announced recently for its themes for the next 3 years, and how that ties into the last 3 years, and perhaps some of the messages within those new consultation and the new themes announced recently, for again the overlap between legal and financial. I want to look have another look at transparency and why I believe that's important. And the SRA believes it's massively important, and again some positive implications of that. And then a look at the innovation in technology, which is the SRA's main theme for 2020 to 2023. And then maybe, if we have time, sort of conclude with how Beaufort, as SIFA professional members and potential financial planning partners for you, today's audience, how they might be able to help you with all of the things we've discussed today. But what I do want to say before I go on is I just want to stress that, whilst these are SIFA professional views, they are honestly informed views. We are a strategic partner of the Law Society and have been since 2008, and some of you probably will have read some of our output articles we write for the Law Society at their request. But most importantly for today, we do talk on a regular basis to the Solicitors Regulation Authority. This is not something that I've just decided based on what they say. It is an informed set of observations, and we have regular contact. I talk to Chris Hansford and all the time, the Director of Regulation, and Jatinder Loyal, a policy associate, is a very close friend of mine. And before he left the organisation, and one of the main drivers for the changes was Crispin Passmore, who again, was very close to SIFA Professional. So I just want to reassure you, hopefully, that some of the information we give you today is informed. It's not just a view of an organisation that wants to help financial planners do well with solicitors. It's actually a view that the SRA wants us to share and is keen for us to get this message across. So start off, as I said, as I promised, to sort of look back at really what's happened and why it happened, and the drivers behind the future of the profession changes, culminating, as I said, in last year's new standards and regulations. And if you look back at the SRA quotes at the start of the process, they wanted to move to rules that focused on what matters, which is high professional standards. But very importantly, they wanted to make it easier for the public to access legal services and easier for you as individual solicitors and firms of solicitors to do business by increasing the flexibility of how you do that. That's not necessarily a subject for today, but obviously we have freelance solicitors. We have the ability now to set up separate businesses for non-reserved activities, which we could cover at a future seminar. I'm not going to cover it today, but it's all part of the changes, as you will be well aware. What I really want to look at is the four drivers which they talked about at the time, and which was a real concern, I think, for the solicitor community and therefore for the SRA as a positive regulator for change. The consumer research, largely driven by the Competitions and Markets Authority, obviously indicated that only 1 in 10 people were using a solicitor or barrister when they had a legal problem. Now, if you're a solicitor or you're running a firm of solicitors or a partner or a director of a firm of solicitors, that's worrying. And it was the same for the regulator. They wanted to address why that was. But in the research, the main thing that came out of consumer research was it's the lack of information, and it makes it hard for people to make informed decisions. And that weakens competition with the marketplace. And this is why we have transparency, which we'll come back to today. But I think really, if I want to summarize it, I call it the Google Society. If somebody doesn't have a relationship with a firm of solicitors and they have a legal issue and they don't necessarily know where to go, they will start by researching. That's what people do. They Google something and they will start with perhaps a wide field, certainly more than one firm of solicitors or more than one legal services provider, and they'll narrow it down before they then approach, which is why, and we'll come back to, as I say, transparency in these changes over the last 3 years is so important. It's aiming to address that fact that the research said we find it very difficult when we look at solicitors' websites or solicitors' literature to sort of see what's involved in a service and what it's likely to cost. And this is one of the key drivers. And on the other side, the regulatory side, we have a handbook, which, much to my amusement, was written by the same person who wrote the Beaufort's own regulatory handbook, a lady called Samantha Barras, and her team were poached from the FSA, taken over to the SRA because the Legal Services Board, as you probably know, after the Legal Services Act, was very keen that solicitors regulation was much more about the consumer, and they pointed to the model of financial services regulation as being the perfect model, which of course we find quite amusing. But really what it was, therefore you had 2012 introduction of the handbook, which was indicative behaviours, outcomes, 440 pages, far too complex and costly for you to apply, and largely, I wouldn't say ignored, but it was too complicated, and it didn't do what it was designed to do. It didn't help you when they introduced compliance officers for legal practice. It didn't help that individual or the management of the firm really address any issues, and it certainly didn't help you fine-tune the way you delivered services. And that was because it was too complicated. Pages and pages of rules drive compliance up, and of course that's a disadvantage for SRA regulated firms as against non-SRA regulated providers of legal services who perhaps don't have such high regulation. So these were the things that they were looking at and they wanted to address over the last 3 years. And as they said at the time, as Paul Phillip, the SRA chief exec, said at the start of the consultation for the changes in 2016, the SRA expects solicitors and firms to meet the rules and the rules they should follow should be simple and easy to understand, and pages and pages of complex bureaucracy do not benefit anybody. So the new approach was rightly about putting the onus on professional judgment and professional ethics of solicitors. But really, one of the quotes I remember very much at the time was, it's a case of we're taking out everything that's unnecessary, and therefore what we leave, and this is the final outcome, if you like, in 2019, what's left was everything that was necessary. So you've gone from 440 pages to 120 pages of much more concise, principles-driven regulation, which you're aware of, and we'll talk about in a bit more detail today. So we've gone from this FSA-driven or authored handbook full of indicative behaviours and outcomes, which really was waffle, but not enough genuine, concise guidance, to taking all that waffle out and retaining only what was important. So we have a very succinct, to the point, and very crucially, and I will make no apologies for continually talking about this, the introduction for the first time of a firm code of conduct alongside the solicitor code of conduct. And I think this is probably the biggest, most significant change, certainly when it comes to the relationship between you as solicitor practices and financial planning practices that you wish to refer work to. And obviously we'll hone in on that today. So, why do you want to work, or why should you be working with financial planning professionals? Well, there's frequently a need for complementary financial advice that arises from your work, obviously. Your own regulator is encouraging you to be more holistic when identifying such needs, and they are encouraging more professional referral. As Crispin Passmore said to me once in 2018, before he left, he said, the thing is, Dave, clients don't think in silos, so we need to stop offering them solutions in silos. And I'll come back to this, but it's that as a client, I have a set of problems I need solving. I don't necessarily, as a client who's not financially or legally savvy, recognize or divide the problems. I just think I have a set of problems, whether it's in estate planning or whether it's in divorce. There are sets of problems, aspects of which are legal and aspects of which are financial. So the regulator wants to encourage you to work with financial planning professionals in a more professional fashion, which is obviously the main thrust of today's presentation. So in the old rules, you'll remember the rules that impacted on referrals. So this is not necessarily just the financial planning professionals. Obviously, this could be any third-party referral. In the old rules, you may remember it was outcome 6.1 and outcome 6.3. So outcome 6.1, when recommending a client seeks advice from a third party, it must be in the best interest of the client. Logically, why would you do something that wasn't in their best interest? Of course. But 6.3, the client must be in a position to make an informed decision on how or whether to proceed. Now, in my mind, and certainly the mind of SIFA Professional, that always said something quite logical to me. It said, well, 6.1 has to mean that you as a firm of solicitors or you as an individual solicitor have done due diligence on the financial advisory partner that you're going to refer to. Because how can you demonstrate to a client that the referral is in their best interest if you haven't done the due diligence on the firm you're referring to? And 6.3 always suggested to us that due diligence and that reasoning should then be made available to the client so they can make that informed decision. Now, I would say this has been the case in some circumstances, but in the wider sense, I'd say it probably hasn't been the case. And each individual solicitor probably carried on doing their own thing, even though in the 2012 handbook, in theory, the compliance officer should have had the responsibility for overseeing the referral process. But there was no enforcement. The SRA is not as well staffed as the FCA, for example, but also, very importantly, and Culps used to say this to me, well, we understand why you're saying what you're saying, Dave, and why your members are saying what they're saying to us. However, that referral section, that's in the individual code of conduct, and we trust our individual solicitors to make professional decisions on what's in their client's best interest. So, because those rules are in the individual code of conduct, that's down to the individual. And you can't really argue with that logic. But I don't think that's what the SRA intended in 2012 when they introduced the role of the compliance officer for legal practice in this context. But that's obviously changed last year. So what we now have in the new regulations, standards and regulations, is provisions for firms as well as individuals. And again, I keep stressing this is the most important thing. 5.1 and 5.3 cover the rules on referrals, but crucially, only referrals to what the SRA calls a separate business, which a separate business is where there is a fee involved, or there's a shared fee, or it's a joint venture, for example. The key is that we've gone from 10 principles down to 7, and the core principles cover everything that you as a firm or as individual solicitors do. And obviously the principle that really we still have to hone in on is the principle of always acting in your client's best interest. And it's demonstrating that a referral is in the client's best interest, but demonstrating that in a firm-wide process, not as an individual, which is why I think it has to be best practice now from November last year for the firm, not for an individual. And we'll look at this in a bit more detail. So yes, it's about Principle 7, as Crispin Passmore, actually in his probably last week before he left the SRA, in a meeting I had with him, he said, Dave, remembering acting in the best interest of each client is a general obligation, so it doesn't need to be repeated specifically for referral. And this is the point he was making about this going from 440 pages of waffle down to 130 pages of concise rules, because those principles govern everything you do as an individual, but crucially now as a firm, and the firm has the responsibility of putting structures and processes in place to ensure the professionalism of the individuals. And informed consent. Now, I'll talk about this because I think it's important. You don't actually need to gain the client's informed consent to make a referral unless there's a financial interest. So the thing that governs it is whether it's in the client's best interest. However, the due diligence is critical. But in my view, and I really don't understand this, and I've said this to the SRA, if you are going to refer a client, and it's incumbent upon you as a firm and an individual to tell that client why you've made that decision to refer to Beaufort Financial in Reading, it's incumbent upon you to explain to the client why you've decided that referral is in their best interest. Having done so, and you ask the client whether they're happy to make that referral, for you to make that referral, and they say yes, I don't see any logical reason why you as a solicitor's practice wouldn't want to record that. And I'll go on to say, and the SRA actually agrees with me on that. But the thing I think we need to hone in on before I come back to that is this greater acknowledgement of best practice. And Crispin spoke to our conference in 2018, and he talked about the way it had been in the past. Due diligence must lead to that informed consent. And in the past, it was deciding who to refer to, as he quoted, might be based on personal choice or pre-existing relationships. Now, I'm not making judgments here, but, I refer to a financial planner. I went to school with them. I play rugby with them. I play hockey with them. I went to university with them. We're a member of the same golf club. These are not valid reasons for deciding a referral. That's not to say those individuals aren't the right people, but what's now incumbent in the new rules is to demonstrate why and have that record. So this is why the person I play golf with is the right financial planner, because of the following reasons, whether it be qualifications, longevity of relationship, professional standards, and so forth. We'll come on to that. So what he expects now, and what the firm code of conduct really ushers in is this new era. We're expecting firms to have a better understanding of the organisations they refer to, and referrals need to be based on a more measured approach. So this is why I think we now have the dual codes. And I thought these two quotes from a partner at Kingsley Napoli Solicitors, who you'll all be familiar with, very succinctly described it. The two codes. This was, the year before they came in, actually in 2018. The code for solicitors describes the standards of professionalism expected by the SRA, whereas the code for firms describes the expected standards and business controls. I can't stress that enough. And the structure of these codes makes it explicit the approach of the SRA, which is to focus on the behaviour of individuals and the systems and culture of firms. And when you know this and then you read the firm code of conduct, it's very, very clear that, yes, we expect our solicitors to act professionally. Solicitors always act professionally. But now we want the firms to put structures and processes and guidance in place to ensure it's even easier and more firm-widely within structures and processes accepted by all the individuals within the firm, which is important when it comes to the decisions you make on which financial planning firms you want to work with and you want to refer to as firms, rather than allowing your individuals to make those decisions. And just so you know, it's not just me saying it, these are slides that the SRA themselves, as you can see, used at the SIFA Professional Conference. Referrals to a third party should be based on a measured approach, as we've said. Law firms should maintain their independence. Can you justify referring clients to the same third party? Now, that's interesting. This is not about whether you're an independent financial advisor necessarily. We know that. This is about your independence as a law firm. And this is why I believe that the SRA, well, I know the SRA would expect you to have a short list, call it a panel, a preferred list of third-party referees in any given area. And financial planning would be no different, because unless you've set up a joint venture or there's a financial structure where you have to really demonstrate that firm of financial planners, although I think Beaufort would fit the bill, have expertise across the board in every area of financial planning, what you might want to do is have a short list of firms that you centrally have agreed that all your individual fee earners and solicitors and partners adhere to. And it could be a firm for estate planning, a firm for pension and divorce, a firm for mortgages. You would have a particular firm of financial planners or firms of financial planners in any given area. So that's what they mean about referring to the same third party all the time. They expect you to act with independence, and we know that's one of the 7 principles. And so you need to understand what Beaufort or other financial planning partners are allowed to do. You need to look at the FCA governance and see what business they are allowed to transact, rather than relying on them telling you. They really expect you to have done the due diligence. And as I said, when there's fees involved, when you're referring to a separate business, you do need the client's informed consent. It doesn't have to be in writing. It could be a recorded phone call. But they go on to say, and this is the bit I'm talking about when it comes to best practice rather than the actual rules, it's the spirit of the rules. And I'll let you read the slide here, but I'll talk around it. I think when you as a solicitor or as a firm of solicitors, you are making a referral to Beaufort, you will more often than not be transferring personal client data to Beaufort. So under GDPR rules, you'd expect to have the client's written consent anyway. So there's a very good reason out with the SRA rules why you would want to get the client's agreement, as per this SRA slide. And also, we had to think about vulnerability. It's a very, very hot subject today for both our regulator and for your regulator. And as you will know better than I, many of your clients you are acting for would be deemed vulnerable, whether they've recently bereaved or whether they're going through a divorce. They could potentially be deemed vulnerable clients. So another very, very good reason why, having made the decision to make that referral and explain to the client why you've chosen Beaufort, that they would perhaps give you their informed consent to make that referral. So lots of good reasons out with of the actual rules. It's best practice, over and above the actual succinct nature of those rules. And they are relying on your professionalism, of course. So I actually get asked this question a lot. So I asked the SRA this question directly. Some of my members say to me, well, we talk to solicitors and they say, well, we understand the rules now, but what if we don't want to make the referral? What if it's all too complicated? And whilst we recognise perhaps we could and we should, we've decided as a firm we don't want to have all those processes. And I asked the question of the SRA, and their answer was pretty direct, actually, and quite potent. If you have identified the need for financial advice as a result of legal work undertaken and you don't make the referral, how can you be acting with integrity and in the client's best interest? So Jatinder, my contact at the SRA, thought that perhaps if you didn't make a referral, as a professional having identified the need for financial planning and you didn't make the referral, you might be in breach of 2 of the 7 principles. So, very, very strong reasoning as to why you should act holistically for your client and make that referral. Going back to what I said about clients don't think in silos, they come because they need a problem solved. You are solving a large chunk of that problem, but there's a further part of the problem that needs some sort of different financial advice or professional advice or tax advice. So you might need to refer to an accountant or a financial planner. That's part of your process because the process started with you. If you ignore it, you're not acting in the client's best interest. So very powerful from the SRA, I think, on that particular question. And what I want to stress here, just to reiterate what I'm saying about it, the expectation from the 25th of November last year, and let's face it, you had from February to November to get used to it. The rules were published, and we knew the date from March. But this is the section. If I said to the SRA, what's the one thing in the firm code of conduct that would explain to solicitors why it's important to have a process when it comes to third-party referral? And it's this one, Compliance and Business Systems 2.1. And really, I can talk about the rest of it, but if you just take that first sentence in bold, I'm not sure how many more ways they could say in one short sentence that you have to have a process. Effective governance, structures, arrangements, systems, and controls. There's 5 different words in one short sentence that say you need to have a process. So you need to have a process to ensure that you comply with all the SRA's regulatory arrangements, as well as other regulatory and legislative requirements apply to you, and importantly to all your managers' employees. So you as a firm have responsibility to have a process and a structure and a system that allows you and your individuals to be compliant. And it goes on to say, quite crucially, in point D, your compliance officers are able to discharge their duties under 9.1. Sorry, that should just be 9.1. So they are saying very clearly in 2.1, make sure as a firm that the CULP has the power and the authority to put these structures and processes in place. And again, that's reiterated in that section 9.1. So it's in 2.1. It points to the CULP in 9.1, and 9.1 reiterates the same point. And if you made a comparison in Beaufort world, maybe 10, 15 years ago, you might see a different financial planner at Beaufort with the same type of client, and they might give you a different solution. Now, every client should have their own outcome, but what the FCA wants, FSA as it was and FCA now, they expect firms to have a process. So the fact finding will be the same. The attitude to risk questionnaire when it comes to investment will be the same. The processes that Beaufort take your client through will be the same, and that will determine the right outcome for that client. So the outcome will be an individual outcome, but the process that gets them to that point will be a firm-wide process that's accepted and used by everybody within Beaufort. And that's what the SRA expects now of you as a business, and a solicitor's business. They expect you to have processes for everything, including third-party referral. I'm just going to pause for a slurp of coffee. Apologies. So hopefully I've covered in some detail what the SRA expects when it comes to third-party referral and referral to financial planning professionals. So, in summary, where are you as individuals or as individual firms? Have you decided what your criteria is for due diligence? What's important to you when selecting those third-party referrals? It may be that you're reviewing the ones you've used already. So you conduct that research and then finalise the partners that you wish to work with based on specialisms and qualifications and accreditations that match the needs of your clients in the different areas of law. Ensure that everyone in your firm is then aware of that process and accepts that process, and make that due diligence and perhaps an informed consent precedent available to everybody in your firm who is likely to be referring or would need to refer to a third-party financial planner. And there will be plenty of support available to you from Beaufort as a SIFA professional partner, because we make a lot of marketing material and up-to-date knowledge available from what the Law Society and the SRA tell us. We will then inform our members what they need and make sure they're continually abreast of changes and what's relevant to you as we go forward. So in some of those areas, there's some prepared due diligence templates that we offer our firms, the sort of things that we think would be important and should be important to you as a solicitor. Beaufort will be able to help you with that. We do have some informed consent wordings, and the SRA have looked at them. They won't allow me to use the word endorsed, but I sent them to them. They checked them, asked me to change a couple of sentences and a couple of words. So the precedents that Beaufort Financial can make available to you are pretty much SRA approved. So, you know, there is a process. So you have the due diligence, you can show the client this is why we've chosen Beaufort, and then are you happy with that? Yes, okay, you can sign this informed consent precedent. So Beaufort will be able to help you make it easy to work with them if indeed, as I hope, they are the firm that you've chosen to work with. As well as that, we provide a lot of client marketing material and educational material that you can use that only Beaufort can provide to you. For example, we have client guides to estate planning, pension divorce, later life financial planning. So just quality material that only Beaufort as SIFA or other SIFA professional firms can give to you that you can use with clients to make them aware that you're working with this fantastic firm. We do seminars every month for CPD, which they can invite you to. I'm running one for our members across the country tomorrow in a similar vein to this one, actually. Obviously, we do a lot of articles in the press, and you can review those, or they're available. I write for Law Society, I write for Modern Lawyer, I write for Central London Lawyer, I write for the Law Skills Council. So there's always educational material informed that our members can make available to you. And there's a lot of approved business precedent. So, if you need support from Beaufort, either directly or via myself with Beaufort, then it's available to you. So let's just, in summarising that section, really, let's just remind ourselves why it's important. What is the objective of referrals? Why is joined up legal and financial important? In my mind, I think it complements and enhances what you do. I think it enables you to have regular contact with clients. And I think sometimes financial planners don't realise how important this is. I mean, it's not easy for you necessarily to maintain contact. This is not a criticism, but a lot of areas of law are very process driven. They don't necessarily lead on to an obvious reason to speak to that client again. I mean, I do the same jokes all the time, but, did a great divorce for you. Can I do you another one? I did the probate for your mum. By the way, how is your dad? These aren't easy things. But when you work with a financial planner, they will be reviewing their client's portfolio on a regular basis, and they will involve you, and they will invite you to the meetings. They will be able to update you on the client's circumstances with the client's permission. So that's important. It enables you to turn perhaps a customer into a client because you meet them a lot more, or you have regular contact with them. And lastly, it is the way that the SRA is pushing you. They want you to work more holistically. If you don't, others will, would be my summary there. And they are putting simpler rules in place and pushing you to be more organised when it comes to working with third parties, whether it be accountants or financial planners. They want you to have a process, and I think that's very, very important, of course. And coming back to that point I make a lot, clients don't think in silos, don't offer them solutions in silos. We've been encouraging collaboration for 28 years, and we call it the trusted advisor team. Who's in yours? Are Beaufort one of in your trusted advisor team? I hope they are. And are your clients aware of that? I think it's very, very important to let your clients know that you, as a firm of solicitors, recognise that you won't always be able to provide all the solution, but you work with trusted partners that you've done good due diligence on that will. And obviously you want to know that you're referring to a safe pair of hands when you refer to Beaufort, and in the same way that Beaufort will want to know they're referring to a safe pair of hands when they refer with you. So you want to be part of each other's process. Very, very important. So moving on to now and next 3 years, I'm sure many of you or most of you hopefully will have read this. The consultation finished in January. They've now issued the final paper. You know, they're very much about embedding the last 3 years. So we have more to do to embed our reforms, to evaluate their impact, and to take further steps if needed. But it's time to look more widely and consider what the next few years may hold. So this is, if you like, what they think they will need to be doing as a regulator to support you and your clients over the next 3 years. So, and I think this is important, and I like this quote because it very much recognises that legal services are not always the whole solution. So legal services underpin economic and social transactions of all different kinds, spanning different sectors and regulatory jurisdictions, and with innovation and technology increasingly cutting across traditional boundaries, working with partners will be essential. So what they're saying is here, they recognise, because of this ever-changing world, they have to work with other organisations and other regulators because that's the way clients want it and that's the way the direction of travel is. So in the same way they recognise as a regulator, they need to be, you know, working to ensure that the way they regulate is appropriate to this multi-professional, multifaceted advice that people want. You need to be embracing that. So these are the 3 themes. Embedding high standards for ourselves and profession, and that's really looking back at the future of the profession reforms of the last 3 years and embedding them further and tightening them. Then they're looking at technology and innovation and helping you as a solicitor community adopt the appropriate technology and innovation for your clients, and they recognise that they need to be on the front foot as a regulator to help you with that. And then again, they want to be on the front foot as a regulator, anticipating and responding to change. So they're the 3 themes that have been announced. And I think we need to come back to it, and I will. If you look at the regulatory themes, they're very much about embedding what they've done for the last 3 years. I think transparency, and I'm going to move on to this, is definitely going to evolve and expand. Obviously, the SRA badge is now compulsory, so an increased significance there, and the standards and regulations definitely need to be taken seriously, and they are constantly, if you look at the SRA website, reviewing how to enforce what they're doing, and they're evaluating the way they're enforcing at the moment. But we'll look at that. So we certainly look at that in light of transparency, and we'll come back to transparency. But then technology, they recognise as a regulator that perhaps solicitors are behind the curve in adopting technology compared to other professions, and they recognise as a regulator that they need to be much more supportive of you when it comes to helping you adopt the right type of technology and regulate appropriately. So, you know, help you grasp the opportunities provided by technology and use those to improve the way you work and deliver services to clients. And crikey, you know, this couldn't be a more appropriate time to be talking about this, could it really? As we sit here using technology to communicate with each other today. So just looking at the regulator then, so we want to embed the last 3 years. I do expect stricter enforcement and expansion of transparency. I do think there will be an ongoing focus on the client experience being more uniform, firm-wise. They will encourage new innovation, and technology will be encouraged. So these are the themes, and certainly, again, stressing the point, legal services underpin a wide range of consumer services, for example, financial, housing and health. So they are recognising that what you do as a profession links in and is an underpinning service for other professional services. So they have to regulate accordingly, which I think is very encouraging. And therefore greater collaboration. So new business models, new legal and regulatory requirements, social and demographic change, the blurring of professional and jurisdictional boundaries will all test consumer understanding and regulation further. And it comes back to that point I keep making. Clients want a set of professional advice. And we call it a trusted advisor. The SRA is really much recognizing that. But if I give you two obvious examples for this audience, if I'm coming to a solicitor getting divorced, I would hope the solicitor would say, well, yes, we can deal with this. We'll help you with the process. We'll take you through this painful time. But I recognize that there are some pensions involved. It's out with my field of expertise, but we work with Beaufort Financial, and here's the person. This is why we work with Beaufort, and I'm going to introduce you to them to look at the pension sharing, for example. And on the flip side, if I am a client coming to see Beaufort about my retirement, I wish I was, but if I was looking to retire and Beaufort said, well, actually, Dave, we're going to put you in a flexible drawdown contract because that's appropriate for the way you wish to retire, but we won't do that until you've got a lasting power of attorney in place, because we don't know what your decision-making capacity is going to be for the next 25, 30 years. So we will not transact this and implement this advice until we've introduced you to the solicitor we work with for LPAs. So it's that joined-up process that's important, whichever the starting point of the advice required, and that's absolutely critical going forward. I think I've stressed the points enough there. But I do want to look at transparency. Right at the beginning of this presentation, we talked about why the SRA was changing the way it regulated, why it was introducing these rules. It came out of the Competitions and Markets Authority research. The SRA's own and the Legal Services Board research reaffirmed it. We are in this Google society. Consumers do want to understand the protections, and the consumers do have lack of trust. And don't shoot the messenger. This is the research. So I think transparency is important, and I think it will become increasingly important. And we're writing a lot of material for our members, which you'll be able to access in the next few weeks through Beaufort, around a guide to going beyond transparency and taking advantage of transparency. So which services are included in display? You know this. But are there any services not included? This is what you have to do. So in certain core areas, and you know which they are, you have to include what services are likely to be or going to be in the process within that display price. You have to talk about any services that are not included in your price. That might be, for example, local authority search if it comes to conveyancing. You have to have details and experience of the team who are going to be carrying out the work, and you have to have typical timescales for the key stages of that matter in the core areas. This is what you have to do. However, the SRA is already hinting an expansion. Last year, when they did their first web sweep, only 25 firms had done everything that they expected, and 17% of firms out of 500. But if you just pro-rated that up, about 2,000 firms had done nothing in the first 6 months. And in August last year, they started presenting, saying, actually, we recommend as firms and solicitors, you should go beyond the compulsory services. And I think this is important because it doesn't make any sense to me to have all the information in the compulsory area. So everything about grant of probate, everything about conveyancing is described in detail, who's going to be helping you, what the stages are, what the likely cost is, and then you go to wills or LPAs or divorce, and there's no such information. It doesn't make any sense to me if the reason for doing it is to help consumers who are researching your website make an informed decision about whether you're the right firm. Surely you should be putting as much information on there as you possibly can to differentiate yourself from the next firm of solicitors they're looking at. And I think they also have mentioned the lack of personalization. I think biographies are absolutely critical. I think we do, as a consumer, like to get the experience personalized during our research. So if I can go on your website, if I can see your picture, if I can read about you professionally, as well as perhaps a little bit about your personal life, it personalizes the experience. I already have a connection with the person who's likely to be delivering the service, the legal service I need. These are the sort of things that I think they're going to readdress and come back to. They've already announced that they've done the second web sweep. They haven't published the results of the SRA yet, but they have said there's still quite a lot of non-compliance from firms when it comes to transparency. I really don't still see the logic. So from me, my suggestion would be, follow best practice in all areas, not just those that are compulsory. Use biographies. They can very much personalise the research. Go beyond the main individual. If there's going to be a team of people beyond the solicitor, the legal exec, paralegal who are working with you, why not introduce them all at this stage? Because why why give yourself the possibility that someone else, if they don't have a solicitor and they need a legal service and they're doing research across 4 or 5 websites, make yourselves the best. And I think it's important when it comes to the fact you work with Beaufort. I wouldn't necessarily name Beaufort, but are you selling legal transactions or are you offering a client service? And if you're offering a client service, as I keep coming back to, it has to be holistic. So I think on your website, I would be looking, if I was a consumer, to a solicitor's website saying, we work with other carefully selected third parties, which are appropriate. I don't think you have to name them, but I think if you're the solicitor's website that says, we work with fabulous accountants and financial planners that we've gone through a process to select when it's appropriate, when there is complementary advice alongside our legal advice, we will recommend you work with these carefully selected individuals. That again will set you aside on your website. So let's go beyond transparency, because I think if you don't do it now, you're going to have to do it later in the year, or if not next year. I really believe that in my conversations with the SRA, they are going to expand transparency to cover all areas, and I think get ahead of the game would be my advice. So when it comes to that, update your website. This is your opportunity to tell them about what you do. The fact that you work with others, as I've said, we work with other professionals when it's in your best interest. Great opportunity. So that's enough about transparency. As I say, we're producing some new material you will be able to access through Andrew, Mark, and the team at Beaufort. But technology and innovation is the central theme. We will try and stay on top of this at SIFA Professional, and therefore our members like Beaufort Financial will be on top of it when they come to their conversations with you. But yes, they are very much looking to encourage you to embrace innovation and technology within your businesses. But can financial planners add value potentially here? I think maybe they can. There's a lot of areas in our world where we do use technology on a regular basis, and technology that I think could be very useful to you, improving your client outcomes. And I've just listed 3 potential examples, and I think cash management is one. We work at SIFA Professional with a company called Deposit Sense, where you can research the whole high street bank account and deposit market in the UK, whether it's trustee bank account, whether it's power of attorney bank accounts, whether it's just high street deposits. You can compare the whole market. That's the sort of service that a lot of financial planning firms would use. And I think Beaufort today will talk about it. Cash flow modelling, absolutely critical to financial planning. But there's so many areas where cash flow modelling, which is a tool that Beaufort will be using regularly with your mutual clients. But if you think about it, you can't really do financial planning. If you are going through a divorce and you need to be looking at separating pensions and deciding whether your client that you're acting for or the client that another solicitor is acting for are still on track for their retirement, you have to be able to look at that. Cash flow modelling is that tool. So you can provide reports by working with Beaufort for your clients around cash flow. It could be future income from a trust or beneficiaries. It could be care home fees planning. There's lots of areas where you will be dealing with clients where cash flow modelling will be useful. So again, your own regulator wants you to embrace technology. This is a technology that we've already embraced in financial planning that could be very, very useful for you and your clients. And also, we use quite often in financial planning world, and you're starting to have this, cybercrime is a big thing, secure portals to communicate in the most secure fashion you can, might be very prevalent to you working with third parties. Because not only could you then make a referral to Beaufort in a secure basis, whether it's Dropbox, whether it's Catalyst, there's lots of systems out there. Some of the systems you use, you might be able to adapt for this, but you want to know that secure as refer, if the refer is secure, sorry, but also it gives you an audit. If you do things via technology, it gives you a compliance audit. So if the SRA ever does come and say, okay, I see you've made that decision, you've made that referral, what was the, what happened there? You will have a compliance audit of everything you did when you made the referral, when the financial plan came back to you, what was done for the client, because you can use it all through an IT portal. So these are just 3 things that potentially financial planning partners might be able to assist you with, because this is the theme for the next 3 years. The central theme for the SRA is around adopting IT within your business, but we may have already adopted some IT within the financial planning world that might impact and positively impact the relationships and your working relationship with Beaufort Financial going forward. So really, I've covered an awful lot of ground. You probably gathered I'm quite enthusiastic about the subject. I'm quite a believer in what the SRA has done. That it's very positive. There's a lot of positivity in uniformity. I don't think anybody wants to do away with your individualism, but they want to put your individualism within a structure. And they expect your firms, your compliance officer and your management to put structures and processes in place to ensure that you as individuals can operate in the most professional fashion in all areas. And obviously today we're talking about how you work compliantly when it comes to making referrals to third parties, particularly financial planners. So I've finished. I think Andrew will now be able to hand the presenting mode over to his colleagues and himself. And obviously, if there's any questions, I can't see anything in the chat box, but if you come back to Andrew or any of your Beaufort representatives later, I'll be happy to answer emails via them. And lastly, I would say, if you're interested in the learning outcomes of my presentation, a synopsis and learning outcomes to log your own continued competence, as the SRA would like you to do, I'm more than happy to send that out in bullet point fashion, in the appropriate fashion as the SRA hopes we would like you to log it. I can do that for you via Beaufort. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Dave. That really was fantastic and informative. I have to say, from my own experience, and I know Mark Dolby agrees with me, that sitting in a room with a solicitor, an accountant and a client brings far more out overall and gives a far better outcome for a client. So working holistically and collaboratively with solicitors definitely is a benefit for the client. Just a couple of things from Beaufort's point of view. Should you want a due diligence on Beaufort Financial, we have that document ready and waiting to go. So if anyone would like that, please let us know. Dave briefly touched on vulnerable clients, and he's very right that quite often we are dealing with vulnerable clients purely because of their personal circumstances, death, divorce. All of these things breed into making it harder for clients to make big decisions when unfortunately they have to. So we have a due diligence document, and we also have a vulnerable client document. If either of those are useful for you, please let us know and we're happy to share them. We're going to move on now to Chris Knight from Beaufort Financial, who is going to run through a little bit of experiences and potentially how we deal with clients coming across. If I'm clever enough, I can get him started. So with a bit of luck now, Chris, are you there?
There we go. Should
Chris,
be there.
Excellent. There you are.
Perfect. Thanks, Andy.
Excellent.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. I can see some familiar names here in the guest list, but for those who don't know me, I'm one of the advisors here at Beaufort, and I'm just going to run through a few slides around why working collaboratively with a financial advisor can add significant value to your client, or in this instance, specifically with personal injury cases. I'm hoping that I can now function the slides. Here we go. So the role of the financial advisor has evolved over many years, starting out purely from a product salesperson and now into a professional who can be summed up with the following foundations. Every client has a life story, and we work to understand their current situation and their immediate needs in order to start building this plan. To this end, research is paramount to everything that we do. We want to know their situation, their long-term objectives, and their short-term needs, so that we can balance this in accordance with their care costs, how the settlement could likely be structured, looking at everything from the cost of care to amending a property and expenditure for day-to-day trips out with their families, and balancing this against the settlement achieved, be it capital payments or periodical payments on the back of that. We then combine this with the information gathered and our experience and knowledge as financial advisors, analysing the client's situation to build an optimal tax-efficient plan for their future needs. Being independent and whole of market means we consider every possible provider an option available to the client, ensuring not only that their needs will be met, but in the most clear and suitable manner. Our approach is to work with you in order to make it clear that the client and their professionals, the action that they're taking, but more importantly, why. We do this through the use of diagrams and educational documents, which both reduce the jargon and increase the comfort for the client. Our job doesn't stop once a plan has been established and implemented. Clients' needs are always changing, and together with you, we work in order to ensure that their needs are always at the core of any decision being made. Meeting quarterly or biannually to discuss the investment performance, the tax position, and updating our cash flow plan to incorporate these changes as and when they happen. We don't believe that working in isolation on investment or tax decisions delivers consistent or best outcomes for clients. After all, you have worked with the client to establish a personal relationship and have gained a deep understanding of their current and ongoing needs. By maintaining a collaborative stance, we continue to adjust and justify the client's ongoing investment management and tax optimization, validating the effectiveness through the use of our cash flow modeling. Investment management is often thought of as city folk shouting buy or sell into phones while sat in front of Bloomberg terminals. However, the role of the financial advisor is to search through those shouting the loudest and to employ a suitable investment method, a clear strategy which ensures the long-term needs of our clients are met without taking unnecessary risk with their capital, otherwise compromising their security. As such, we find ourselves working with legal professionals to research, analyse, and even interview various professionals running investment portfolios in order to find the right one, or as this slide shows, maybe more than one. We have seen an increase with our clients blending investment styles to deliver a more robust, secure, long-term approach to investment returns. We often sit overarching the different investment managers, observing performance compared to peers, as well as against appropriate benchmarks to make sure we're comparing apples with apples, before linking all of this back to the client and their professional to ensure their ongoing needs remain uncompromised. A typical investor is not likely to consider using a mixture of different tax wrappers and would generally seek to withdraw from the largest pot first. The comparison table illustrates just how effective tax planning can be, especially when combined with income planning for the needs of the client. As seen in this instance, taking income in the most optimal tax manner can help to preserve the value of the fund, which in turn can create both longevity and security for our client. That brings me on to the cash flow model, just to demonstrate how by amending the simple withdrawal strategy seen on the previous page, that actually we can build the story into this picture by adding an extra 13 years of security for this particular client in question. It's easy for us to use this word security and to forget that the chart and the word itself actually translates into peace of mind for both the trustees, the deputies, as well as the client and their loved ones at a time when they most likely need it most. So to sum up, the role of the advisor is to help ensure a client's needs are met through a combination of care, knowledge, and professionalism, which without working in conjunction with you, we most certainly wouldn't be able to achieve. Technology permitting, I'm going to try and pass you back to Andy now, but thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Chris. Again, a very simple but effective demonstration of how we help our clients and we're able to make the difference to them. I'm just going to run you through an actual case study now of an existing client of ours. I first met Dom in 2015. I was on a corporate day. He's walked into a tiny little office with a notepad and a pencil. Being an engineer, they believe that's all they need in life: a pencil and a bit of paper. He then spent 20 minutes going through a carry forward calculation and exactly what he was going to put into this pension and how he's going to amend his tax code for the rest of the year. Incredibly intelligent, clever chap, and got 99% of it right. And that was actually all he wanted from me at the time. I did, however, start a conversation of saying, well, what do you want to achieve? What's the point of putting a large amount of money into your pension? And his answer was, I just know it's the right thing to do, but I don't really know what the life looks like for me in the future. So we set out putting a financial plan together for him, and you can see on the screen a quick summary of it. I started to slowly dig a little bit deeper for him and say, well, you're earning the very good money. You're not spending enough of it. You obviously enjoy your job, but if you could do anything, what would you do? And the answer stunned me. He was he still is an aerodynamic engineer, traveling the world with his knowledge, and he's up there in the top 5 or 6 people in the industry in the world. He turned around and said to me, well, ideally one day I'd like to give all of this up and be a concert pianist. Well, once I picked myself back up off the floor, I started listening to him properly, and while he loved what he's doing, since being a child, he'd always wanted to be a pianist, and he practiced and he at home, and he is of the quality that he could be. So we started to get together on a regular basis and really go through whether this was possible or not, and what options he had. We then put together a set of goals for him, and what really was important to him. His life was based on 3-year contracts from his job. He couldn't get away from that. But while he enjoyed his job, and he really enjoyed it, he actually wanted to go, well, I've got an itch. Can I scratch it? So can we get an opportunity to do this? He had an outstanding mortgage. He knew that the transition would be expensive. He would have to do a lot if he was going to achieve what he wanted to do. A new music room in the back of his house, a new piano. And when I asked him anything else in the world he could possibly buy, he turned around and said, actually, you know what? I would love a classic car. So we managed to be able to buy him, or he was able to buy a classic car this time last year. So moving on to where we are today, it's a bit small on your screen, but you can see he has now signed his last 3-year contract, and at the end of next year, he will be leaving his job. He will not earn any money for 3 years. Is the plan? Hopefully he will, but if he doesn't, he will be okay. We have a plan now that the worst case scenario is after 6 years he goes back into his current profession. But it really is a change of life that he thought he might be able to achieve, that we spent probably 10, 15 meetings over the course of 18 months going through and really getting himself into the mindset. And 18 months ago, when he signed his new contract, he knew he's going to be his last. So financial planning isn't just about putting blocks in place, putting silos in place to get money out in retirement. It's about ensuring that clients are living the best life that they want to do, really understanding their goals and their objectives and their needs, and marrying that up with what they want to do with life. That's just a quick 5-minute summary of what a client potentially can do and what we are on a regular basis helping our clients to achieve. Cash flow modeling is about putting a plan together. As the last 2 months have told us, plans never go to plan. But if you have a plan and you're able to adapt it, and you're able to make sure that even when the worst things happen, that you can still achieve your needs and goals, that's really the basis of financial advice, and the reasons why we see it such a positive thing, and we're so pleased and proud of what we do for our clients and going forward. That brings us to the end of this webinar. Thank you all very much for attending and listening. We hope you found that useful. There is a very good chance that that this has been recorded. I say a good chance. It was my responsibility to get it recorded, but I think I've done it. We would be delighted if you'd like to share what you've just listened to over the last hour with your colleagues, and would be delighted to share that. So if anyone would like a recording of this so other people can listen to, or if you thought it was that good, you're more than welcome to listen to it again. But thanks once again for listening. Just a couple of reminders. We have an investment seminar coming up, and also a mental well-being seminar coming up, or webinar, should I say, that again is designed to help people through these times of constant change. So if you want to get involved or want to do that, please look on our website and you'll find the details there. But once again, thank you very much for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe. Thank you.